Hello and welcome on the 7 Network to our first telecast of the season for 1982 from the tight and tricky Amaroo Park circuit on the outskirts of Sydney. And what a meeting of motor racing it promises to be, with the first round of the Better Brakes AMSCAR series for touring cars. And just to set the cat among the pigeons, it has been raining during practice yesterday, and there's prospect of further rain during racing today. And boy, that's going to mean something. And for the full implications of that, let's go now to Evan Green.
And the implications are fascinating, Gary. We have Peter Brock in the Marlboro Holden dealer team Commodore and pole. That's to be expected. What's not to be expected are the cars around him. He has two Mazda RX-7s, Barry Jones alongside him, Terry Shield right behind, with Collin Bond taking over the Chevy Camaro from Kevin Bartlett on the second row of the grid. Dick Johnson, the National Touring Car Champion, is behind him with Allan Grice alongside, running a Commodore this time. So some real surprises up front, due largely to the weather, but as Peter Brock told me, he had to go in a berserk fashion to get ahead of the Mazdas. They're very quick. A driver who is not so quick and is further back is a more famous name than those. To tell you about it is over now to Mike Raymond.
That's correct, Evan. Well, I suppose the one driver that has brought the big crowd out today to Amaroo Park is Allan Jones, Australia's former world driving champion. Not so much good luck in practice, because Jones will be starting from position 13 in the grid. Now, it's a 25 lap, the final this afternoon, a 10 lapper to follow shortly, but even from position 13 and in a Camaro, it's going to be awfully hard for Allan Jones to win. The car's out on the grid. We're almost ready for the first race.
Almost ready indeed, Mike Raymond. Yes, the cars certainly are out on the track, and they're making their way down now around the back of the course, and will soon be coming down to grid up in front of the starting tower. And weather holding off at the present time. In fact, the track, Evan Green, looks in pretty good order under the conditions.
It'll be nice and cool, but I'm sure a few of the drivers and certainly the team managers will be wondering whether they've made the right choice with tyres. This first heat, only 10 laps, so it's only going to be a 9-minute race, not a lot of time. Peter Brock going through now on the warm-up laps, made faster time yesterday, but as he told me, berserk was the word for the way he had to drive in order to wrestle pole position away from Barry Jones in the Mazda. Now, this is a race for the bigger cars in the series, so we won't see the Mazdas and the smaller vehicles running. This is all the big fellas. And the man leading at the moment as they warm up is Collin Bond, running for Kevin Bartlett in the Chevy Camaro. I asked Kevin why he put Collin in the car. He said, well, we're trying a few things out, and if they don't work, I'd rather Collin took the blame.
Pretty exciting concept, actually, to do this, isn't it? Considering the practice times yesterday, in particular, to split the two types of cars, the capacity to have the bigger cars running in one heat, keeping them apart from the smaller cars, yes, running them separately and then mixing them all together in the final.
Because the small cars are quick. They're running the peripheral ported engines in the Mazdas, and they are very powerful, very light, very fast. I'm sure the crowd here today will be delighted to see Collin Bond back in a competitive car. He's long been a favourite of the crowds here. But of course, in the last couple of years, he's been running for Masters and Holmes in the V6 Caprice, and while he's driven them with the Bond Brilliance, they just haven't been powerful enough for him to win. But he could win in this car, the big Chevy Camaro, which he said he loves to drive. He said it's just like a rally car, so we might be in for some very entertaining driving by Collin Bond.
Yes, I spoke to him a little earlier, and he's giving me a very graphic account of the way he slips and slides that big car around this circuit. I'd like to get him in here one day just to do a voice-over lap and really tell us how it's done. There they are, gridding up, and the way they grid up is that 05, the Marlboro dealer team Commodore, with Peter Brock, is on pole. Alongside him, Collin Bond. There we are, Bondy, and looking through the window there, you can see Rocky in 05. That's the front row of the grid. On the second row, we've got car 17, Dick Johnson, in the true blue Prudential Falcon. There he is, and alongside him, believe it or not, Allan Grice, the forgotten man of motor racing in recent months, makes a reappearance now at the wheel of the Recar's Commodore. There he is, just trying to squeeze his way in at the last minute. Typical Gricey.
That's a hard little bit of manoeuvring, but he gets the car through. No longer in the BMW, and he's driving for Alan Brown in the Recar Commodore. And Gary Wilkinson, he was just sensational in practice yesterday.
Very, very quick indeed, and he's really going to be putting some pressure on these guys on the front row of the grid here today.
A pair of Falcons behind, Gary Wilmington in car number 8, and Bob Muir in the Army Falcon. That's car number 24, the camouflage green, brown and black Falcon alongside him. Gary Rogers in a Commodore behind him in 7th place, with Murray Carter next in the Falcon.
Almost ready for a start now for our first televised race, and off very quickly. Collin Bond on the outside with Peter Brock the inside and the Marlborough Holden Dealer Team Commodore. Then up on the inside comes Dick Johnson with Allan Jones up to a fiery initiation to touring car racing in a V8 Camaro here at Amaroo Park. Brock leads over the top. Through Marlborough down to Dunlop. Johnson now advances into third place. Gary Wilmington up to fifth and Allan Grice to fourth. And back in the pack there's Allan Jones somewhere in the Barbecues Galore Camaro.
Jones
number
was in
2.
sixth place, so he's made up an awful lot of ground right off the starting grid.
Right, car 2 and a very aggressive start by Allan Jones. So watch for the big Chevy Camaro. Number 2, that's Allan Jones.
Coming down the back of the course, it's Brock, Collin Bond, Dick Johnson, then Grice in the rear-car, Wilmington, and then Allan Jones. There he is, right on their hammer.
Wilmington making a move on the inside of Grice that didn't pay off. There's Brock leading over Collin Bond in second place. Back to third place. That's Dick Johnson of Queensland, car number 17. Along the front straight at Amaroo Park, one more lap completed. The order unchanged. Brock leading over Collin Bond in the 9 Network Camaro. Jones also pressing his claims further back as they go over the top of Marlborough, drop down into Dunlop Loop, and ever tightening left-hander opposite camber 2. There's Grice going through. Wilmington is the next one, followed by Allan Jones. Also positioned there well in the field is Murray Carter. The back straight again, coming down through Mazda, working away the left-hander at Honda. And I think Brock this time finds Collin Bond a little closer to the bumper of the Marlborough Team Commodore. Here they come through the turn, work away at the short chute that takes them down to Winfield Corner. And Brock certainly having his hands full, try to move away from Collin Bond, who's doing a great job first up in the V8 Camaro.
There's no doubt that the man coming third, that's Dick Johnson, is trying terribly hard. He's got that car all over the road. He was telling me in practice the car's a bit too stiff, and it's a little hard to control here.
Back in the field a little, Jones and Dixon, the Camaro teammates, having a little bit of shuffle up amongst themselves.
And that was Gary Rogers we saw in car 11, the white Commodore, and Bobby Muir bringing up the tail of the field, but it's a pretty close field as they go through to complete 2 laps, 8 to go.
Over the top of the hill, the Clive Benson Brown, Gary Rogers at the wheel. There's Jones as we work now to the back straight. Keep in mind, this is the heat for the V8s. The smaller cars will have their own race a little later in the program. But Brock still the race leader in 05.
A man behind the preparation of Allan Jones' car, and someone that is familiar with the efforts that have gone into getting this vehicle going has joined us. I know Jonesy had some troubles with shock absorbers and general handling on the car. Graham Moore, you've got the headband on. I was about to talk to Gary Wilkinson, who's not there anymore. But Graham, what sort of troubles have we had in getting the car ready for Allan Jones?
I think the main thing, Evan, that we've just been a little push for time, and 3 weeks to prepare 2 big cars to be competitive is a little tight. But we're not making any excuses. Allan's keen to go and keen to learn to drive these big cars. He's only done about 15 laps, 20 laps in practice, and I think he's really getting into gear now.
He doesn't have the tyres he would like, I believe.
No, we had tyres flown in, and somewhere along the line they're still coming to Amaroo Park. They were supposed to be here at 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and they haven't arrived.
They're lost in transit. What a
I'd
blow.
say the boss is playing rear gunner here for this move. You've got Warren Cullen, who I think would like to get up and pass Allan Jones, and sitting behind there's Jones too. Further back to Ron Dixon, teammate, the second of the Barbecues Galore Copper Arc Camaros, and back behind them we've got Warren Cullen in the Commodore.
Warren Cullen was who drove with Allan Jones at Bathurst. Not that Jones drove very far because of the troubles they had there. So it's an unusual threesome there, and having the thought of trying to pass 2 Camaros would be about the most intimidating prospect in motor racing. Allan Jones leading this procession, driving with plenty of aggression, but as Graham Moore was saying, the car not quite right yet, but maybe Graham will be ready for later races in the series.
Yes, well, we've organised to do a lot of testing between now and Amaroo. We're going to concentrate on Amaroo Park. So we'll be up here doing a lot of testing and sort of chassis refinement. So next meeting, I'm sure, and hopefully we'll be competitive with both cars.
There you see it, Allan Jones, first run in the Camaro. Ron Dixon, teammate, sitting back behind him, and Warren Cullen getting terribly agitated. He wants to get along with it. Meanwhile, back at the front, the order is still unchanged. It's still Peter Brock over Collin Bond, and they've put 100 metres back to Dick Johnson, who is under siege from Allan Grice. We'll hold that shot as they come onto the straightaway. You can see the gap from first back to second. Then as we go up there, you can see Dick Johnson, and he has got Allan Grice hot to trot in the rear car Commodore.
then Gary Wilmington, but Allan Grice is really giving Dick Johnson a bad time. He'll be the next car over the top. Dick Johnson, there's Grice right behind and acting like a tail-end windscreen wiper. He's across the tail of that car from one side to the other. There's no doubt that Dick Johnson would know he's got a driver behind him because Grice is trying terribly hard to get by. You can see there how Grice, how the Falcon rather, is going a little wide. Johnson was saying the suspension is a bit too stiff here for Amaroo Park. He's having a fairly miserable sort of ride. You can see Grice is quicker. He'd like to get by. He goes out wide to take a quick line through the corner, but he can't get by Johnson, who holds on well there. Johnson having a few handling troubles. Grice would like to get by in the Alan Brown 3-car Commodore.
Into Whitfield corner. Dick Johnson presently placed third in the race, about 3 laps remaining. And coming up on the inside, or thinking about a pass, is Allan Grice. He's been signalling that to Dick Johnson for the last 3 circuits of Amaroo Park. We'll see what he can do as they head up to the top of Marlborough Hill. Through Bitcher Pave now, to the left-hander over the top. Grice is probably as quick as anyone, if not a little quicker than most, around Amaroo Park.
Well, it's this part of the circuit, Mike Raymond, where Allan Grice will have to try and get by. He knows the circuit very well. He lives here, so he certainly is very familiar with every corner and every stretch of Richmond here. But he can't get by Johnson at the moment.
I was just saying to Gary, Evan, that Dick Johnson is a true professional nowadays. And on Friday he arrived here, which is most unlike Dick. He didn't get here till lunchtime.
Just a
Dick
second, Graham. We'll wait for this one. You're really working up to pass on the outside of Dick Johnson. I think this is probably where the real interest in the race is.
He'll try and make a move on the inside. He's certainly got the better line there. He's inside. Oh, there's Ron Dixon who went off.
Satellite down there on the back chute, but he's okay. And Allan Grice has gone through and taken third away from Dick Johnson as they head up Bitcher Pave to the top of the hill, over the crest. Johnson says no more of that. Was thinking about inside pass. That was not the place to do it.
Anyway, the main point I was making is Dick Johnson always comes, tests, and then goes home, thinks about it, comes back testing again, and he hasn't done it this week, and I think his performance today shows that.
Right. We're unhappy with the car, and it's Grice who's now up into third place. They have 2.5 laps to go. This is the 10-lap heat for the larger cars in the Better Brakes Touring Car Series. There'll be a heat to follow for the smaller vehicles, the rotary Mazdas and others, and then they'll all come together for the final race of the day over 25 laps. And that'll be interesting because in practice yesterday, the Mazda rotaries of Barry Jones and Terry Shield were as quick, virtually, as Peter Brock, and faster than Dick Johnson and the big cars. So it'll be a very interesting confrontation between the large and smaller cars on a track that seems to have evened out the differences in performance between them. It's Peter Brock, though, going hard. If you doubted he was trying hard, all you had to do was watch the way he wriggled that car across the top to realise that Brock, running a car now that is heavier than it's been before with all the SLE parts, is trying very hard.
Peter Brock heads down through Mazda corner, down to Honda corner now, through the gears, left-hander. That is very, very tight indeed. Has the car all hooked up with air conditioning, power steering, just about everything else that he's supposed to run, power windows certainly.
The more weight he's put in, the faster the car seems to go. Mind you, he's been doing a lot of work on the suspension as well to get the handling like it was. He had the handling very good last year, then they tried a few moves and seemed to lose something, and it's taken a little bit of time to get back. Pit crew signaling as they go through. The board is up. They have 1 lap to go.
We'll stay with Peter Brock as he goes over the top of Marlborough down into Dunlop Loop, and just have a look at the angle that he takes from the next corner. Okay, coming down through here. Drives every track perfectly, Peter Brock. Very, very easy on equipment. Coming down the back straight, Collin Bond still placed in second. Allan Grice in the Recar Commodore is in third. Only half a lap remaining to the left-hander at Honda corner. Now it looks like a win coming up to Peter Brock in the opening 10-lap heat this afternoon.
There's no doubt that Collin Bond has closed a little bit. Now I think Peter may just have eased up a bit. It's been a marvellous race by Collin Bond in the big Chevy Camaro. He hasn't raced it before. He's very close, as you can see. And I think Peter Brock is probably happy to let him get as close as that. He's going to win the race. He's still got the final to go, which is the big race on the program today, and it's going to be Peter Brock. He takes the first 10-lap heat. The checkered flag is out. Peter Brock takes the flag. Collin Bond second in the Camaro, and it'll be the Recar car of Allan Grice third, with Dick Johnson fourth. And an enormous cloud of smoke behind Dick Johnson as he crosses the line. It looks like the Falcon has blown its engine, or there's something, a tremendous amount of oil
just going up Bitcher Pave Hill, and there we have it.
Oh, let's hope it's nothing terminal, because we want that car in the main race, which is the final event on the program today. But Graham Moore, it doesn't look good, does it? an ominous sign. Certainly he's got major troubles. Let's just hope it's something that can be fixed before the final race on the program, because we need Dick Johnson out there, the national touring car champion. Didn't qualify among the fastest yesterday, but always a very competitive driver. Allan Jones has dropped back quite a bit, but he brings the Barbecues Galore Chevy Camaro across the line in 10th place.
There's a section of the crowd you can see as Dick Johnson backs the car down the straight heading backwards to the pits. Just being signalled back, and I think Dick would know. I don't think that is a minor problem. I think it has something rather terminal.
A lot of smoke coming out of the engine bay there, Mike.
They're wheeling it back into the pit area, and Johnson at this stage, I think that would end the week of frustration for Dick Johnson. Certainly no thought of firing the motor or what's left of it, and he looks a little perplexed by the whole problem.
Well, it's a very unhappy man, Dick Johnson. His car being wheeled in behind the pit area after blowing a motor at the end of the first race here at Amaroo Park today. Amaroo Park. Well, now we've seen Allan Jones in action in the Barbecues Galore Camaro, and Allan, that's just the beginning really of a pretty heavy motor racing commitment for you in Australia this season.
Yeah, that's right. I'm down to do the GT Sports Saloon Series for Alan Hamilton in the 944 Turbo Porsche, and I think I'm down for about 8 or 9 races in the Camaro.
Well, this has come together pretty well, considering that it's been a fairly hasty deal put together.
Yeah, we only put the deal together 3 weeks ago, and unfortunately it's left no time to do development on the car. Our tyres, unfortunately, haven't arrived. We were waiting for some Goodyear tyres to arrive, and they haven't arrived. So at the moment I've got Goodyears on the back and something else on the front.
You've had 2 major outings in Australia since your, quote, retirement, unquote. Firstly, the AGP. Were you disappointed with events there?
No, not really. I mean, I qualified equal quickest and I was running second, and I had gearbox problems after about the 5th lap, and then with about 4 laps to go the engine completely stopped on me. I was disappointed in that, but I wasn't disappointed the way I went. I think I went all right. And your first outing in touring cars, of course, Bathurst, I guess you'd rather forget. Well, there's not even that much to forget, really. I only did about 5 laps in total.
Well, you'd be looking forward to another crack at it this year.
Oh, yes, indeed. I'm very impressed with Bathurst. I think it's a fabulous venue, and I'm just dying to get back there.
Particularly in this big car?
Yeah, I think this car will be well suited to it. You know, as I say, we've got 4 weeks until the next race. We've got a lot of development to go on the car. We have to play with some springs and shock absorbers, and you know, we've got quite a bit to do, but I think by the time the next race comes, it'll be looking good, and certainly by the time Bathurst comes, I hope it'll be very competitive.
First heat of the Better Brakes Touring Car Series coming up. There they are, and this is the heat for the big cars. We'll have the rotaries and the smaller cars in action in the second heat event after next, but right now it's the V8s. There's Grice, fastest man with a 53.5. Dick Johnson alongside him. Collin Bond in the 9 Camaro. Then Peter Brock. Gary Wilmington in a Falcon alongside him. Robert Muir. Brian Callaghan also in a Falcon. Graham Moore in the Copper Art Camaro. Terry Finnigan making his appearance in a Commodore. Gossie's Jaguar. He arrived late at the track, but he's there, boxing on. Murray Carter's Falcon. Clive Vincent Brown in a Commodore.
And no racing, getting away for the first heat now, and Dick Johnson very smart off the line too, and he heads Allan Grice coming up to the top of Bitchapay for the first time, and just look at the gap he's put over them. Collin Bond in the 9 Camaro moving up smartly into second place. Here they come over the top of the Marlborough Rise and down into Dunlop Loop, and the order is Johnson clear of Collin Bond, and an electric start there from Peter Brock brings him up to about 4th place.
I see John Goss is stuck a bit wide on the top of the hill there, but has he got in yet? No, not quite, and they're not prepared to let him in. Gossie's having a rough time of it. His first appearance on the track for quite some time in the big Jag.
Some dust there, but Gary Wilmington coming up very smartly through the field. Brian Callaghan doing a good job there at number 47, just ahead of Muir. Then the number 2 Camaro, the Barbecues Galore car with Graham Moore through the bottom loop. That's how close you can see them on opposite lock coming out of that corner, just a tit sideways. The entire field goes through, and there's Dick Johnson of Queensland leading the first lap. Second place held by Collin Bond in the Camaro. Allan Grice is in 3rd place.
And Grice, I've been anxious to get past Bond too, if he can do it.
Dick Johnson has always performed well here at Amaroo Park, with the exception of the last meeting, the opening round of the AMSCAR series. Had incredible bad luck, blew an engine in the biggest possible way. He vowed to come back and win, and he looks pretty good out there in front at the moment, leading from Collin Bond and Grice, driving the Recar Commodore up into third place.
Johnson started on the front row of the grid alongside Allan Grice, got the better of the start. Grice has been relegated to third. Collin Bond in the big 9 Camaro started brilliantly, is in second place, but Johnson's drawing, and now Grice endeavouring to take Bond as they go down into the bottom corner. This is going to be close. Bond's got the line, yes, certainly, and holds it as he's entitled to do.
Uses up all of the racetrack in order to...
Grice again having a go at him, and he's got him this time. Grice with the inside track. Plants the foot to the floor and sets out in pursuit of Dick Johnson, but by gee, hasn't Johnson opened up a break while that dice was going on there?
We have Peter Brock zeroing in just behind that batch of cars, running back in fourth place. There's Allan Grice coming through, presently running in second. Just behind him, Collin Bond in the 9 Camaro. Then Peter Brock. He's caught up to the tail of Bond and probably wants to do what Grice has been working away for a lap and a half to do. And just behind Peter Brock, Gary Wilmington doing a great job there in the yellow Ford number 8.
Stands out that car. He ran a great race here in the wet last meeting, Gary Wilmington, and I think this car with a bit more development could really start to put some pressure on the leaders.
There's Brian Callaghan, 47 going through, Bob Muir, Robert Muir in the Army Reserve entry, and then the Camaro, of course, that was to have been raced by Allan Jones. Well, at this stage of the race, keeping in mind this is only a sprint, a 10-lapper, really to get the tyres warm for the later 25-lapper where all the money's on. But even at this early stage, Dick Johnson is running away with this one. There he goes up to the top of the Marlborough Hill, goes over the top, and probably about 50 metres clear at this stage of second-placed Allan Grice. Using all of that corner too, and
yeah, taking up plenty of room in the forward two. Freewheeling in front. There's Grice, trying hard. Collin Bond, Amaroo, as you said, Mike, probably holding up the Marlborough dealer team Commodore just a little, but Brock was free to admit after qualifying yesterday it was just not going quite as well as it was last meeting.
There's Allan Grice coming down through Winfield corner, very tidy through that turn. Brock a little closer that time to Collin Bond, and Bond was very much sideways coming out of that corner. Here's Brock back behind them, a little off the pace at the moment, but I think Peter would be the first one to admit he's only interested in the big money race, the 25-lapper, the second round of the AMSCAR series, a little later this afternoon here at Amaroo Park.
Over the top, Gary Wilmington clinging to Peter Brock as well. He's not going to let these leaders get out of his sights, and he knows that if he hangs on to Brock's tail, he might be in a position to get up amongst the placings, approaching the halfway mark in this 10-lap race.
There's Wilmington, the yellow Ford, doing quite nicely. Brock moving. The track is very, very dry. Just perhaps later in the race we'll get a shot of it. Anyone that moves off the track will be in diabolical problems with the rubble, and just exactly how dry it is there we'll show you later. Okay, sweeping down into the right-hander at Winfield, the 9 Sports Camaro. A little bit of opposite lock on there. Peter Brock tagging him, and back to Gary Wilmington. And there's Collin Bond doing a good job racing the AMSCAR series for Kevin Bartlett. They'll be teaming up, of course, later in the year, and we'll have information for you regarding that a little later in today's telecast. Once again, we picked them up coming down into Dunlop Loop. Brock very, very close this time to Collin Bond. And Wilmington's been able to stay on their tail, so perhaps it is Bond that's holding up the fray at the moment.
Well, that's the battle for third, and meantime back at the head of the field it's still Dick Johnson, but Allan Grice is taking some ground off him, so he's got about 4 laps left to do something in. Going into the corner, here's Grice. Johnson, you'll see him, there he is, comes into view, and there's only about half a dozen car lengths difference between them.
He's pulled back the gap dramatically. Some problem that time for Collin Bond as they came out of that corner. We'll pick that up later for you. There's the gap between the race leader, Dick Johnson of Brisbane, and Sydney's Allan Grice driving the Alan Brown Recar Commodore.
And over the top of this hill, you'll see as the other cars come through that both Peter Brock and Gary Wilmington have taken Collin Bond. Bond now relegated to 5th position in the race. Johnson, Grice, streaking down the back of the course. Johnson really is going fast.
They were very, very quick here yesterday. In fact, the first few cars are well and truly under the record, still held by Bob Morris at 54 seconds even. But in practice yesterday, Allan Grice in the Allan Brown Recar machine with a 53.5 seconds. So just look at him starting now to put the pressure on. Here's Dick Johnson. And Grice, hot to trot, starting to move onto the tail of Dick Johnson's car as the laps run out. Up to Bitcher Pave over the top of the Marlborough Crest and down into Dunlop Loop. A little sideways that time, Johnson. Grice pretty close to him. We'll wait for the third. There's the gap back to Peter Brock. So he, in fact, is gaining, and so too is Wilmington, and they've already left Collin Bond.
Grice is in striking distance now.
Very, very close.
Johnson getting a little bit untidy there. Just put a wheel off the track and under pressure.
I think we're coming up for an interesting final couple of circuits of Amaroo Park for our race leaders. There's the gap back to Peter Brock, then to Gary Wilmington, then to Collin Bond. We wait for them to go past.
As they do, 2 laps to go.
They come on to the front straight here at Amaroo Park, past the pits. Dick Johnson almost looked like he was yawning. And Allan Grice starting to work away now at setting up a passing manoeuvre. It won't be easy because there's not too much time left to run in this race. They both float to the outside and use the full extremity of that corner. And now we find Allan Grice in the Recar Commodore right on the tail of Dick Johnson in car number 17, the True Blue Falcon. 1.5
laps remaining. Can Grice pull something out here? Well, he's certainly picked up a lot of ground on Dick Johnson in the last 4 or 5 laps, and he's really putting pressure on. There are not too many places on this track that you can make those passing manoeuvres. One of them is coming up into Winfield Corner. Grice brakes late. Johnson going well. And last lap board is out.
1 lap remaining, and just look how close Allan Grice is getting set for a pull up the hill as they come up to the top of the hill. Over the top, here they come. And Dick Johnson has Allan Grice very, very close to him indeed as they come through that corner. Now work away down the back part of the course for the final time. Johnson trying to put a checker on the front of the 17 Falcon, and Grice, of course, this is his home track. He does very well here. Takes a good man to beat Grice round, and he really, I would think, is enjoying being back at the in the spotlight of motor racing.
Well, he proved here last meeting 5th in the wet, and today, with, starting off pole position, just a little outgunned by Johnson at the start, and he had a lot of ground to make up. He's made it. He won't have the opportunity to get past Johnson, I don't think, unless he can make a last desperate manoeuvre on this corner.
It's going to be close, though. Here they come out of the last corner. Checkered flag at the ready, and Dick Johnson of Queensland will win the pipe opener. And they're about ready to take off without John.
10 seconds to go, and Johnny Goss is about 200 metres behind the rear of the field.
The start for this will be critical. Watch carefully. They're racing, and Johnson with a beautiful start. The Mazda of Shield gets left at the grid and almost wacko from behind.
Jones is off.
Jones has gone off the racetrack. And as they head up the hill, the 2 starters for the second row again with problems. Johnson wins the start. Into second place quickly goes Grice. Bond is the next one through, and utter frustration for Terry Shield and for Barry Jones. Here comes Queensland's Dick Johnson working down to Mazda corner. Grice in second place. Third place by Bond in the 9 Camaro. And just look at the traffic. There's Shields' car being pushed behind the counter, so his race is over. A frustrating time for both Mazda drivers after qualifying so well yesterday. Back, though, in the lead is Dick Johnson. Jones' car still trying to fire the motor. He's backed it off down on the auxiliary road. We've had a crank down here. That's the Masterton Holmes Capri has gone round. I think one of the Barbecues Galore vehicles was involved with that one. It speeds off into the distance as Masterton tries to work out where he is on the racetrack.
Johnny Goss, who tried to get onto the rear of the grid before the flag dropped, has been, in fact, black flag. Plenty of drama in this race, and the RX-7 challenge of Terry Shield and Barry Jones being put out of business right off the starting grid.
Well, the familiar faces are going to be back here. Callahan trying to contain Phil Alexander there. Here's Johnson using all of the course. Allan Grice closing up behind him. Collin Bond, Peter Brock. That's the order. 4 of the big names, 4 of the big guns. Heading down to the left-hander at Honda corner.
They're 72 Blue Falcon has the lead just ahead of Allan Grice. Then the 9 Amaroo, Collin Bond, Peter Brock in 05. Gary Wilmington in number 8. Muir in the Army Reserve car.
Johnson comes out of that corner nicely. Graham Moore, probably the better placed driver of the Dixon Camaro stable. 17 is Dick Johnson. He leads the field across the line with Allan Grice and the Commodore, who demonstrated in an earlier race this morning he can in fact catch him. There's the multi-talented John Goss, the only talent he hasn't yet mastered was the one to get to the line in time. He's been threatening to make a motor race meeting since Bathurst, and he's made it, and then it was late. Look at this race going. Grice allowing Johnson the freedom of being able to run quickly, and then closes it up at will behind him. They come through Honda corner, and Dick Johnson that time almost took 2 attacks at that turn. The back end was just a wee bit skating. But Johnson now has a real pressure driver behind him, and a fellow who wants for more reasons than one to win. Brock dropping back off the pace, well and true. A little bit from Peter Brock, and there's Bond sitting in 3rd place.
V8's holding down the first 7 positions in the race, and that is a surprise.
Whether they get the, well, again sideways, he's not going to do that for 3 more laps. He did it last time over the top, and I can't believe that Johnson could have tyre problems or be out of brakes. So something gone amiss with the Ford. He's driving it hard, but Grice is going to push him to drive it even harder.
I don't know what he's been doing, but he's never really solved that rear-end problem that he's had with that car. He's gone close to it, but there's still a problem there, and it just rides away from him if he's not careful. And by gee, he's got no time to be careful at the moment, because Grice is tried to go the outside, no way through.
Well, I don't think he'll hold Grice. This is not the... He holds it tight against the wall. That was a better line through that corner. They come back through Camalco corner. Look at Grice doing a NASCAR draft as they come up the straight. Grice sitting right behind it. Collin Bond, if anything, starting to gather the 2 of them in.
Do you reckon Collin Bond might be smiling right now?
I'd say so. They're coming up on some slower cars, so Johnson will have to take a little steadier through this corner. He goes through, uses the full line of the racetrack out wide.
4.5 laps gone, and they're about to lap cars already.
Come down the back straight through Mazda corner. Will kink to the right here. Then the short straightaway where they come down to the left hand. Oh, he's out on the dirt again. And really driving extremely hard, and obviously with some minor problem with the 17 True Blue Falcon from Queensland, as Dick Johnson pulls to the outside and takes one of these Mazdas. Allan Grice follows him through down to the corner. Now the line through this corner is just so critical. Does that nicely into Camalco, and now start finishing straight. Queensland's Dick Johnson. We have a real race going here. Grice playing a waiting game, so to speak, but keeping him extremely honest over the top of the hill again.
The slower car they just passed was the Corolla driven by Alexandra Surplus. It's off the track now into the pits.
How close can Grice get? Pretty close. Down to the right hand.
Is Allan Grice. He's driving with so much confidence at the moment, so carefree in his attitude, but so serious about it when he gets behind the wheel.
Well, he's letting Dick Johnson know that he's there to race him, and race him he will. If Johnson has some problem, Grice is going to take full advantage of it.
Get a look at the break, will you, between 3rd car, Collin Bond in the 9 Camaro, and Peter Brock in 05.
And we've seen, we had one spin out in the back straight, not to worry about it. There it is, number 15.
Terry Finnigan in a brand new Commodore that he's putting on the track for the first time this meeting. Bad luck for Terry. He spun out and lost several positions.
The order's still the same. Dick Johnson holding down 1st place in the True Blue Ford Falcon from Queensland. 2nd place to Sydney's Allan Grice. 3rd to Sydney's Collin Bond. And 4th place to Melbourne's Peter Brock. That's the order. Down to Mazda. Oh, Murray Carter
straight into the pits. By gee, he must have made that decision in 1 split second.
I'd say the reason for that going to the pits was the fact that it had an engine detonation by the look of it. Oh, excuse my dust.
Oh, it expired.
Yes, there's a big problem there with Murray Carter's car. We'll catch that action for you shortly. You can see the blue haze there as they go through the pit turn.
Johnson's still got it. Allan Grice just backing off a fraction at the moment, but look at Collin Bond, will you, in the Camaro? He's lurking in there behind the leading two. He knows that he's got a little bit of smoke in the rear of Grice's car. Couldn't have been brakes. He was on the way up the hill.
Johnson, whatever the problem was early in the race, seems to have got it under control. Meanwhile, Collin Bond just can't believe his luck. There's Murray Carter.
Can't believe his luck either.
One of the veterans of motorsport. Got a bit of the front spoiler missing. And at the same time, they also have what appears to be an engine detonation there too. Okay, Collin Bond moving up behind Grice, who's dropped back a little off the tail of Dick Johnson. Johnson comes down to Winfield, takes it quite cleanly. Grice in second place, Bond is third in the 9 Camaro.
Peter Brock, fourth place, well back, about 70 metres behind Collin Bond. Then Gary Wilmington in the Falcon, and the Army Reserve car behind him. And it's still V8s in the top 6 places. Collin Bond really throwing that big Camaro around with gay abandon.
They've settled down to a steady pattern in the race. Whether Grice is going to wait for a few more laps and come running back at Dick Johnson, we'll have to wait and see. And Bond has made up some gain on Allan Grice, but has been unable to go on with it. They've started to put the pressure back on the race leader. Well, Allan Grice is taking care of that. They come through that turn, through Winfield, short straight to Camalco turn, where you'll see them come through now. There's Johnson. Not too far back behind him, Allan Grice. Then back in third is, of course, Collin Bond in the Kevin Bartlett Camaro.
Back in the field in about 7th place, Phil Alexander leads the RX-7 brigade. As I said, 6 big V8s ahead of him, led by the True Blue Queenslander, Dick Johnson. And everybody's favourite, Grice in second spot.
Well, he's done a great job in the re-car entry. Of course, raced it in the first round of the AMSCAR here for Alan Brown. I believe they're building a new car at the moment, and Grice has a permanent role in the car for the AMSCAR series and also the distance races, which will include, obviously, the premier event of the Australian motorsporting calendar, and that's the James Hardy 1000.
Nose to tail.
They've started to run away a bit from Collin Bond and Brock's. That's probably the most uncompetitive we've seen Peter Brock for quite a long time.
Well, as he said earlier, my car's just lost 0.2 of a second per lap. He doesn't know where it's gone, and he can't find it. Over the top, Dick Johnson really under tremendous pressure and has been right from the outset from Allan Grice. Duncan versus Commodore. Camaro camped behind them. Bond has got through that little bit of traffic as well. Whether or not it was the traffic that held him up momentarily remains to be seen. I don't think so. He's dropped off just fractionally, and fractions are what count around here at Amaroo Park.
Well, back comes Allan Grice. His race is far from over. Back to put the pressure squarely on the shoulders of Dick Johnson of Brisbane. Winfield turn. Johnson is sideways, but not as much as he was in the opening couple of laps of this race. Grice still there, putting the pressure on. It's always a pleasure to watch two good drivers, two great drivers of touring cars, and just how relaxed they look at the wheel of the car. Take Johnson and Grice, both the same. You'd swear that they're out having a Sunday drive. Well, they are.
6.3 seconds, between Dick Johnson and the 4th place getter, Peter Brock. And it's a long time since there's been that distance between that pair.
Grice closing it up again, coming for one quick shot at Johnson through Honda Corner. The short straight down to the right-hander of Winfield. This is where Johnson was leading the CRC Classic last year and spun it coming out of this corner. Regained the lead later in the race. Once again through Camalco turn. And how much closer does Allan Grice have to get? Perhaps at this stage that's where he plans on being. Just sitting there in the draft, pulls to the outside. That was only to move around at the back of the car. There was no way he was going to make an outside pass. Now he thinks about it though.
Oh, boy, oh boy, the race is half over. Still a long way to go, Alan. Take it easy. 12.5 of the 25 laps gone. It's Johnson, Grice, Bond in third spot. Brock, he's fourth. Wilmington in fifth spot. Muir, sixth.
Well, anything could certainly happen between the front-running two cars here. Collin Bond will be around to pick up the marbles. But here comes Grice down on the inside, and he has got Dick Johnson straight underneath. Dick Johnson and Allan Grice go through, but he's all tail skating as well. Johnson roams up on the outside. It's a little cut there as well. They come back onto the start, finishing straight through Camalco Turner. Now it's Allan Grice of Sydney who has taken the lead away from Dick Johnson. Johnson closes it up as they head up Bitchapave Hill to the top again. Collin Bond still in third place. That was ever so easy. He made that look very easy. Happiest boy on the block today is Allan Grice, car number 4. Wanted to win this race. More relaxed Allan Grice than we've seen for some considerable period of time. Here he comes down to the left-hander at Honda. Laps ticking by. This is a 25-lapper for the $70,000 AMSCAR series that's jointly sponsored by Better Brakes and by CRC. Of course, our telecast of motor racing action throughout Australia is brought to you on the 7 Network by Goodyear.
There goes Gricey. And, well, he's probably breathing it a little easier now that he's got by Johnson with about 10 laps of the race to go. And, in fact, pulled away by several car lengths now. Whether or not Johnson's just willing to bide his time for a few laps and get himself together again for another challenge remains to be seen. Collin Bond in the 9 Camaro back in third spot and still not out of touch with this leading pair. But certainly out of touch at this stage of the race is Peter Brock in the Marlboro Neolithian Commodore 05. 7.5 seconds the distance between second place getter Dick Johnson and Brock in 05, holding down the fourth spot. Then Wilmington, then Muir. The Minnesota Bluebird has been a little disappointing. It's languishing back in the field at this stage of the race, as are the Barbecues Galore Camaros, the pair of them, driven by Ron Dixon and Graham Ward.
Through Camalco Corner, the order is still unchanged. Allan Grice in the Recar Commodore. Patron Alan Brown would be extremely happy here today. Dick Johnson of Queensland still holds second. Third place, Sydney's Collin Bond in the number 9 Camaro. They go through Dunlop Loop again. And yesterday in practice, of course, Allan Grice, fastest lap turned by a touring car here, 53.5 seconds. If he can uncork a 53, anything in the 53-second bracket during today's race, he will officially be given the touring car record. But presently still stands to the credit of Bob Morrison, 54 seconds even.
Down into Winfield Corner again. It's Grice, Johnson, Bond, Commodore, Falcon, Camaro. That's the order with 8 laps to run in the second round of the Better Brakes CRC AMSCAR Touring Car Series here at Amaroo Park. Grice, the leader, the Recar Commodore, going through Honda, winding his way back once more towards Winfield Corner. And he's now about 8 car lengths, about 2 seconds, in fact, on Dick Johnson, going into the corner. And still holding down third spot and driving a comfortable race under the circumstances in the big 9 Camaro is Collin Bond.
Certainly leaving a lot of rubber out of Winfield Corner. A lot of it left on the racetrack. Allan Grice continues to stretch his lead over Queensland's Dick Johnson as they drop down into the right-hander at Dunlop Loop. Grice hasn't put a foot wrong at all today in this car, or yesterday in qualifying.
If you're wondering what happened to the RX-7 challenge, Jerry Shield sat on the grid when the rest of the field blasted off, and Barry Jones got squeezed out as they took off the grid, and there's his car just sitting trackside, and that's where it's been right from the outset. Big disappointment for both those leading lights in the Mazdas. The pair of them were sharing second row of the grid, and they'd be bitterly disappointed in right now.
I think a lot of spectators came out to Amaroo Park because there's an enormous crowd here today to see the Mazdas really hold sway over the V8s. Unbelievable to think that the two of them, after making the second row of the grid, have been able to to drop out even before the completion of one lap.
Some compensation for the fans, though, Mike, to see Allan Grice holding pride of place in this second round of the AMSCAR series. Of course, Allan, local resident, spends a lot of time down here on the track, driving, testing, sorting out, and is one of the most competent men around on any track, but this one in particular. And since he's moved back into V8s and in this recar Commodore, certainly showing that he's certainly got a lot of talent and a lot of racing left in him.
As the car comes through this corner, you'll notice the rubber on the racetrack. There it is. And Allan Grice continues his search for the checkered flag for a win in the round 2 of the CRC Better Brakes AMSCAR series that is being conducted here at Amaroo Park Raceway in Sydney throughout the year.
2.5 seconds between Grice and Johnson, and 6.2 seconds between Grice and Bond.
Well, clearly Grice has a car that is trouble-free, able to stretch that lead by half a second again. There's Clive Benson-Brown going through, Steve Masterton, who's back from the States, and there, of course, is Peter Brock. We haven't seen a great deal of. He's been sitting back in 4th place, and I think dropping back off the 3rd place Kevin Bartlett.
Well, dropping back certainly 13 seconds now behind the race leader, Allan Grice. 3.5 laps to go.
Peter Brock and Nick Johnson have been waging a tremendous war for the Australian Touring Car Championship. Alan Moffat entered the fray with a win at Lakeside, and back in winning form comes Allan Grice, so that throws open the series, although Grice has made it fairly clear that he doesn't wish to contest all the rounds of the championship, just the major individual important events.
Peter Brock, I think, might probably be doing the wise thing and not pushing the car to the point of breaking it when he knows that he is a couple of seconds down and that it does require a lot of work on it. And I think he's just out there driving the best possible race that he can under the circumstances, and is content to go away from here, I think, and get it into gear again for the big races to come. Grice is back. Well, the fans have been saying it for the last couple of weeks, and he's certainly underlined that today with his great performance. The race is not over yet, but it's getting on that way.
Here comes Ron Dixon in number 12, Barbecues Galore car that has a ding in the side of the door, so he's obviously met a predator sometime during the early laps of this race. Alan Jones isn't here today, and Barry Jones isn't in the final rundown of placings in this race. And we expected 2 of the Jones boys, Alan Jones and of course Barry Jones, but at the moment even Alan Jones will have his hands full no matter what he's driving, containing Allan Grice.
And as Dixon goes there to Honda, there are 1.5 laps remaining for the leaders. You'll find that the leaders in fact are right behind those cars. There we are. Here comes Grice.
They haven't been running 53-second laps, if anything up 56 seconds most of the times for Grice, so the race hasn't been run at breakneck pace as far as Grice is concerned. He's doing it easy. Still has a couple of seconds in reserve, and that's only as hard as he has to push the car. As we head into the final lap or so of this second round of the AMSCAR series, Allan Grice going through Dunlop Loop.
Grice, in fact, on his last lap now.
One of motorsport's popular touring car drivers, Allan Grice. Been quite a while since Allan logged a major win in the touring car division, and it's coming up for him now. He comes down with only 2 corners remaining, down into Winfield, down through the gears, looking very straight in the car. Drives the car superbly. Last corner comes up through Camalco turn. The finishing straightaway is there, and Allan Grice comes back to win at Amaroo Park Raceway.